Plan, and I'm super excited today to be bringing you another brand new beginner card making class. So if you haven't been checking out my beginner card making classes, this is card class number 3 out of a series that I'm doing, and I'm teaching you all the tips and tricks about the tools, all of the products that we have, and actually how to use them and how to get the best results with the products that we have. So if you missed beginner card class number 1, that was all about some of the tools that you're going to need to get yourself started to be able to stamp and craft straight away. Beginner card class number 2 was all about how to cut the perfect layers, so the card bases and the layers. So there's many things to do with crafting that it's an art that we learn over a period of time. Now, the only way that we get better at card making is to just keep practicing the same things over and over again, and we get better at it. But one of the things is making sure that we have the right knowledge for the products that we have and to be able to use the right products for the right job. So I'm here today to tell you all about the different types of stamps we have, how to get a good crisp stamp image, and also some of the tools and some of the tips that I have that will get you stamping way better by knowing some of the tips and tricks. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the types of stamps. I'm going to talk about how to look after your stamps. I'm also going to tell you tips and tricks of some of those problem little areas that you have when it comes to stamping. Do you have a time where you go to stamp and you think you've got it all worked out, and you go to stamp the image, and when you pull that stamp up off the cardstock, you see that there's a big gap in the middle that you haven't stamped, and you wonder why in the world is that happening? Well, this card class is for you. I'm telling you, you need to watch this because I'm going to tell you the never fail recipe of making sure that you have do everything in your power to get the best stamped image that you can. So good morning, everyone. I can see there's quite a few of you jumping on. So please jump on, say hello, let me know where you're watching from. So I'm streaming this live into a few different places. So I'm live over on YouTube. I'm also live in a couple of different places on Facebook as well. I've just lost my I was going to say my little mouse mat for my mouse. It had gone missing, and I was trying to do it on my shiny bench and it wasn't working. So good morning, everyone. Oops a daisy, I've clicked something there that we don't need to do. There we go. So once again, my name is Donna Gray, and if you haven't seen me before, I come live every week and I show you how to use some of our great Stampin' Up products. Stampin' Up is an awesome company. We have a lot of one of the main things that we're actually known for is the quality of our product, but also how easy the coordination is with our colors. So I'm going to teach you a little bit of tips and tricks about inks today as well. So not only just stamping, but inks as well. So welcome everybody that is joining. So please feel free to share this back onto your social media sites. If you're watching on YouTube, please feel free to share it back onto Facebook. If you're watching on Facebook, please just feel free to share it publicly so that maybe some of your friends might want to come and get in on the action and get in on the tips and tricks as we go along as well. All right, so there's a couple of different types of stamp sets that we have. So we have 2 different types of stamp sets. One we call our clear mount. Now, our clear mount, I know this is a little bit confusing, but our clear mount stamps are actually our red rubber stamps. Now, out of the 2, we have photopolymer, which are clear stamps, and they're made out of a different product. And we have our clear mount stamps, which are actually red rubber. So I wanted to explain to you the difference between the 2 and just the difference in what we have to do when we're actually using those different types of stamps. So bear with me and I will just pop you down onto my desk so you can see. So I've got 2 different stamp sets out here today. And I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about some of the tools and things that we use throughout the process of stamping to make sure that we can get the best stamped images. Now, type into the comments who struggles with sometimes you go to stamp and you get a big section out of the middle of a solid stamp that doesn't stamp properly. Who struggles with that? Type it in the comments and let me know. Has it happened to you? Is it something that you struggle with quite often? So one of the things that I wanted to explain is we have two different types of stamps. As I said, we have our red rubber ones, which are what we call our clear mount stamp. So this is the stamp set that I actually used in my free card class yesterday, so last night. This is called the Earth and Textures. Now, this Earth and Textures is a red rubber stamp, and it's what we call our clear mount. So it gets a little bit confusing with that word clear in there, but they are actually our red rubber stamps. And then we have photopolymer stamps. Now, you'll see here some of these stamps that I've used have got a pinky tinge to them, and I'll explain why that happens as well. Okay, so the difference between the two stamps is this one here. As you can see, this is a red rubber stamp. We actually have stickers that come in the pack with them that have the pictures of the stamps that go on the back, and they actually have a sticky feel to them. Okay, so but as you can see it's got a sponge backing. Can you see how that's got a lot of give and a lot of sponge backing? So on the red rubber side, we have the stamped image and the picture that we're going to stamp. And then on the back side, we have the foam that actually gives it that little bit of give. Now, out of the stamps, and this is my personal preference, out of the different types of stamps, I prefer the red rubber ones compared to the photopolymer. Now, I'm going to show you this photopolymer one. I'll take this clear one. So they're totally clear. Now, the reason there's bonuses for each type of stamp. And one of the bonuses of the photopolymer stamp is that you can actually see through your block when you're stamping. You can see totally where you're actually going to stamp. But as you can see, this is just photopolymer. So it's like a clear jelly type of stamp. And you can see there is physically no give in that. Okay, so it's just a red rubber, just a clear stamp with not any give at all. So one of the things that I use constantly in my craft room is a thing that is called our Stampin' Pierce mat. Now, if you don't own one of these, I am telling you, one of these is top on your shopping list because this is the never fail answer to actually getting really good crisp stamped images. There's a few other factors that come into it as well, but a Pierce mat will just about guarantee you the best stamped images that you're going to get. Okay, and using a red rubber stamp, you will get probably the best stamped image you will ever get. Now, it's totally okay. I use a photo with photopolymer stamps because they don't have that sponge backing. So this Pierce mat actually makes up for that sponge backing that we have on the red rubber stamps. So the Pierce mat gives a little bit of give. So you can see here. So it gives a little bit of give, and it actually helps you get a really good stamped image. Now, when you actually have a clear stamp, it doesn't have that give. So you use a photopolymer stamp. So one of the other things that I wanted to talk to you about too is depending on what your surface is like. So there's a lot of contributing factors to how to get a really good stamped image, and it can rely a lot on about what your surface is like. So you can see here, I've got a really nice timber surface, but when I do this, can you hear that it's very rough? So it's actually got the texture of timber. So it's got that wood grain texture feel of timber. Now, I want to show you what would happen if I'm going to take out one of these solid stamps. Now, how our stamps work is we have clear blocks that they mount onto, and we've got all different shapes and sizes, and I'm going to talk to you about the clear block sizes in a minute. So I can take that clear stamp and you can see it sticks to it. So, how our stamps are designed, so the clear mount will stick to it like that. Now I can take one of the red rubber ones and stick a red rubber one on. Same thing. So the sticker on the back, so you can see it doesn't come off. and it's easy to peel off. So we can peel them off and stick them back on. So I'm going to teach you a couple of tricks about your stamps and how to look after your stamps. And then I'm also going to teach you some tricks about your stamping. So one of the main things when you actually go to stamp is we have all different size blocks. So we have long, skinny ones. We have smaller ones. We have smaller ones again. We have longer, more narrow ones. We have little tiny ones. Okay. We have larger, narrow ones. We have larger again. And we also have this big whopping one, which I hardly ever use. So we have that as well. So that's actually all the shapes and sizes of blocks that we have. Now, in the description, I've actually put, you can actually buy all of these blocks. So one of each of these blocks, you can actually buy them in a set. Okay, they also come with, if you actually get the starter kit, I'm nearly positive it comes with a caddy to hold them as well. So it's actually a dark grey case, and for the life of me, I've looked for mine this morning and I can't find it because I don't use it. I have all my blocks in my drawer, and I very rarely travel anywhere to go and craft, so I don't physically have the need to travel and put my blocks into the caddy. But I do have a caddy, and it's a fold out, it looks like a book, it's got all foam inserts, and these blocks fit nicely into them. So when you fold it out, you have the two sides all full with your blocks. So the blocks are really, really, you can get a full kit like that if you want, or you can buy them individually. So the main thing about having a block is to make sure that you fit your stamp onto the best size block that you can possibly find. So, I mean, for this balloon, that's probably the perfect size block for that balloon because there's not a lot of outside edge around. The balloon fits on it really, really well. So one of the things is you can always fit a smaller stamp on a larger block, but you can't fit a larger stamp on a smaller block. So as you can see, I can't fit that stamp on that block. Yes, okay, it's on there, but it's got all these overhanging edges, and that won't actually give me a good stamped image. So you actually have to try and find the block that is going to fit your stamp really, really nicely and have minimal spare space around the outside edge, but you really, really need to make sure that you fit them nicely. So this one here, that block is actually a bit big for that. So I could actually take that off, and could I fit it on that one? I actually possibly could fit it on that one there, but I could also possibly fit it on this one here. Okay. So the main thing is to make sure that you have your blocks to the right size for your stamps. So that is tip number one, making sure that you have the right size block for your stamp. Tip number two is to make sure when you're using photopolymer stamps that you are definitely going to use a pierce mat underneath on your surface to actually give you a good stamped image. Now, the other thing that I was just talking about before I brought all those mountain of blocks in, the other thing I was talking about too is that if you have a surface that is not even, then you can get a really weird looking stamped image because of what your surface is like underneath. So I'm just going to bring in some scrap paper here. I'm not actually going to do any stamping on cardstock just at the moment because I just want to demonstrate a couple of things here. And I mean, hopefully this is going to happen so that you can actually see what I'm talking about. So because I've actually got um, a surface that has that wood grain type of look on it, you'll find that when you go to stamp a solid image, so this one here is a solid balloon, well, it's fairly solid, and when I go to stamp it, okay, can you see how I've got some lines happening through here, and that it is actually like not giving me a really nice, good, solid stamped image. And that's because the surface is not straight and level underneath. So if I bring in a pierce mat and I pop the pierce mat underneath and I ink up again and I stamp down, okay, now can you see how good that stamped image is because I've got the pierce mat underneath. So the pierce mat's giving me that little bit of cushioning that the red rubber stamp would normally give, but it's also making sure that I have a very, very level stamping platform. Okay, so a very, very level stamping table, bench, whatever. The pierce mat is actually making sure that that happens. So one of the tips definitely with photopolymer, and when you're using photopolymer, any type of photopolymer stamps, is to use that pierce mat. Now, I also say to use the pierce mat as well for our red rubber stamps. Now, even though I can stamp with the red rubber stamp and it stamps pretty well, it's still a fair bit blotchy there because it's on that uneven surface. If I pop it onto my pierce mat and I stamp it down, you can see it's a much more solid, I mean, this one's a texture stamp, so it's probably not explaining it very well. There is supposed to be texture, but it's stamped a lot better. You can see here I've got bigger gaps here with the white. Okay. So, and Deborah has actually just said, was it Deborah that was saying it, that Stampin' Up! Actually have freight free tomorrow. So we have free shipping tomorrow. So if you like any of these products, then by all means, if you want to place an online order, we do have free shipping tomorrow. So it's a really, really great time to actually purchase some of your products. Not to mention, if you spend more than $65 through my online store, you're going to get the card kit to make the 3 cards that I made in my class yesterday. You're going to get that for free. Or if you spend more than $100, you're also going to get a pack of the in color dots as well. All right. So first things first, the Stampin' Pierce mat is a definite must. So if you don't own a Stampin' Pierce mat, you need to put that onto your shopping list because it is a definite must for getting a really good stamped image. So you can see the difference between that gorgeous balloon there compared to this one. Okay. So if you're getting issues with your stamping, that you're getting bits and pieces that aren't being stamped properly, it could be it's definitely going to be your surface that you're stamping on. A pierce mat will alleviate that, but also making sure that you have inked up really, really well. Okay, so I've talked to you about our blocks. So all of our stamps, they all get mounted onto our blocks. So you only need to buy one set of blocks, and you'll have stamps. You'll have blocks for every single stamp that you own that they will fit on those blocks. So if you decided to buy the bundle is the best way to go. You get one of each size. And then what you'll find is there'll be more popular sizes in the blocks. So I'll bring in those block sizes again so we can see. So one of the main questions that I get asked all the time is, what is the most popular size block that you use? Okay. And I will tell you this block here, which is block size D, that is the most popular size that I use. It is the size that most stamps will fit on. Now, the reason why I said about making sure that you have the right size block, I want to show you this again. If I have, let me find a tiny, teeny, weeny little stamp. Okay, so let's take, this one's a photopolymer stamp. It's out of a different stamp set, but I'm going to take this tiny, tiny little stamp and I'm going to mount it onto a really big block. And I'm going to tell you the reason why we don't want to use a really big block when we've got a tiny little stamp. Okay, so I'm going to ink up with that ink again with this little tiny stamp on the big block. Okay, so I'm going to ink it up. Ooh, can you see what's happened there? Can you see all of that ink that has gone onto that block? Because I'm trying to get the ink onto that small little stamp in the middle. So I've got ink all around here. Does anyone know what that's actually going to do when I go to stamp it onto my project? What all of that ink around there is actually going to do? You're running the risk of actually stamping, but also getting ink all the way around. Okay, so that is why it's really, really important to make sure that you get the stamp, the block that's going to fit your stamp perfectly. So now if I had a small stamp like that and I was going to use it on one of my projects, the first thing I would do is say, okay, I definitely need a small enough block. So I'm going to get the smallest block that we have. I'm going to ink that up. And can you see? I didn't get ink all around the outside of the block. Hang on, and I hold it over the white. See, I didn't get any ink all around the outside of the block. I can actually stamp it, and I've got a perfect stamped image without getting ink all over my project because I've chosen the right size block for the stamp that we use. Okay. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is when we ink up, when so the most popular size is definitely this block. I definitely use the little one for the tiny little stamps. I definitely use this one for actually the sentiments. And then I use a combination of this one and the other size one that I've got. This one here that I've got that stamp on, I use a combination of those two as well. But and then if I've got long narrow stamps, I tend to use that one. So those ones there are definitely my picks out of all of the blocks. But as I said, sometimes it's easier just to get the whole set and then you've got every size block that you need. Now, what actually happens is when you're creating and you have to keep taking stamps on and off your blocks, this is when I suggest to people to get multiple of their most popular size blocks, because when you have multiple, you're able to mount things up on all different stamps. And I have a whole drawer just below my desk here that I have all of my blocks. I've got several blocks in all of the sizes, so that when I'm actually stamping on a project, I don't have to keep taking the stamps on and off. Because when you're taking the stamps on and off, if you forget to clean your stamp before you take it off, you're going to get ink on your fingers. When you get ink on your fingers, you're going to get ink on your project as well. Okay. So one of the main things is to make sure that you actually have a good supply of blocks. But if you're just starting out, my suggestion is you could get a couple of them if you wanted, or buy the actual one whole set, and then you would have all the size blocks that you actually need. Okay. So another thing that I wanted to talk to you about too is, does anyone get what we call the stamping halos? Does anyone have problems when they're actually stamping and getting the stamping halos? Now I'm going to try and get a stamping halo here. And I'll explain to you why we get the stamping halo. So Jenna says, I agree. I need to buy multiple blocks now. Okay. And that, for the one thing, is when you're doing multiple stamping, it's easier to have them on the blocks, and then you actually have no problem with them being able to change between two. Okay, so Janice is saying that she gets halos. Deborah's saying she gets halos. Kay's saying she gets halos. I'm going to tell you right now the secret of why you're getting halos, and I'm going to tell you how you stop getting those halos. Okay, so for the first thing, I'm actually going to clean this and start again. Do we want to change up the color? We might want to change the color, seeing we've been using that color for a bit. Let's go to copper clay. We'll change up the color. All right. Now, one of the reasons that people get halos, for a start, when we're going to ink up with our ink pads are very, very juicy. They're very, very, the ink pad is designed that when it actually closes, it actually flips over, and the ink pad actually is stored upside down. So the reason that it stores the ink pad upside down, the foam pad, is to make sure that all of the ink runs to the top of our ink foam pad, to make sure that we get a really good inked image each time we use it. So when we actually open up our ink pad, it flips it back over the other way, and then we slide it in. So the ink pads are actually stored upside down, which makes the ink all run to the top of our foam pad on our ink pads. So we are definitely going to get ink on our ink pad. So one of the things is to remember that when you are actually inking up your stamp, is to just tap lightly. Now, if I just sit that, so you can see here we have no ink on it. Okay. Oh, well, it's a little bit, we have no ink on it. Okay. So if I just sit that and press it with one finger and stamp down, can you see how much ink we have? Okay, so that goes to show how inky our ink pads are. So that means that we physically don't need to have a heavy hand when we go to ink it up. So now, normally, what I say to people is if you're going to ink a stamper, to grab it and just to tap lightly. Okay, so if you tap lightly, you will get a really good, crisp stamped image, no problem whatsoever, just by tapping lightly. Now, if we are heavy handed with our inking, if we go, oh, I need some ink, I'm pushing it down into there. And then I'm going to stamp really hard. So I'm going to stamp really hard. Oh, did you see here? We've got the halo. Okay. Now, the reason that we got the halo is we inked up so much that we've got ink all on that outside edge of our stamped image. Okay. So we've got it all on the outside edge for a start, but we've also rocked our stamp when we've actually stamped it. So even if I ink up, oh my God, I'm going to get a whole heap of ink and I've got ink all around that outside edge. If I actually just stamp straight down and back up, I don't get the halo because I haven't rocked my stamp. So I've stamped straight down and straight back up. If I actually stamp and I stamp at a bit of an angle, or I push on that block really hard, oh, hang on, I'll ink it up so I get some more ink on there. If I push on it really hard and I'm angling it a little bit, I get the halo. Okay? There is absolutely no reason that we need to press really, really hard on our stamp to give us a good stamped image. If we have actually inked it up really, really well and we've sat it down, now you can see here I've got 2 fingers. I'm not actually pressing it that hard. I've got 2 fingers and I'm letting that soak into the cardstock. Well, it's not actually cardstock, it's just copy paper, what I'm using at the moment. But you will get a really good stamped image. So the one thing that we've got to remember is to make sure that we've got the right size stamp. And see, even when I've been heavy-handed, can you see how I've got ink on my block there? That is when you're going to get inky and you're going to end up with a mess everywhere. So what you've actually got to do is make sure that you are only tapping to actually tapping to ink your stamps up, and making sure that you are not pressing down really, really hard when you go to stamp. That's what gives you the halos. Okay. So one thing that I want you to all promise me from now on is that when you go to ink it up, you're just going to tap, tap, tap lightly on your ink pad, and you're actually going to stamp it straight down and straight back up. Now, the idea is to make sure that you actually hold it there for a little while to actually let the ink soak into the cardstock. Okay. So that is one of the main things. Now, another thing that I wanted to talk to you about is when you are having issues with the way your image is stamping onto your cardstock. Now, I'm going to say this, yes, because I'm a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, but if you are not using good quality cardstock, you will find that your stamped images will not stamp very nicely on poor quality cardstock. And I want to tell you, you want to know how I know this? Because I used to be a poor crafter. So when I used to be a poor crafter, before I became a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I actually used to use any cheap cardstock that I could find. If I could find it in the cheap stores, if I could find it in like places like Spotlight or whatever, if I could find really cheap cardstock, I used to buy it. And I was not a stamper. Like when I actually used to craft, I used to do a lot of die cutting and I used to do a lot of heat embossing for sentiments and things, but I very rarely stamped. Now, I know that's hard to believe. You're probably thinking, I can't believe that you didn't stamp. And I can honestly tell you, I absolutely hated stamping. I thought it looked cheap. I thought it looked nasty. And I just didn't like it at all. I didn't like the colors, colored ink. I physically just did not like stamping whatsoever until I discovered Stampin' Up. And when I discovered Stampin' Up and I discovered their cardstock, and also their envelopes. Now, I had a conversation with a customer of mine on the phone yesterday about the quality of our envelopes. Honestly, our envelopes are like butter. They are so beautiful to stamp on. And I used to be one of those crafters that I used to use cheap envelopes from the supermarket, from the cheap store. I used to do that and I didn't stamp on my envelopes. But now that I have actually realized that Stampin' Up! Envelopes are absolutely gorgeous, I stamp on their envelopes all the time. I love it. It's like, honestly, they are so smooth and beautiful to stamp on. Who agrees? Type it into the comment. Who agrees about our Stampin' Up! Envelopes? How beautiful they are to actually stamp on. So one of the main things is to make sure that you are using good quality products, good quality stamps, and making sure that you have actually got your surface nice and even and using a pierce mat. Now, if you use a pierce mat religiously under all of your stamping all the time, you will have not an issue with a stamp not stamping in the right in the middle, or not stamping nice and clean and clear and crisp. It is because your surface is not level. So making sure your surface is level is one of the main key factors. Making sure, see, look at your wall. You're loving the envelopes. We all agree our envelopes are absolutely stunning. So so that is one thing, making sure you've got the pierce mat. The next thing is making sure you're inking it up and you've got the right size block for the size stamp that you have. Now, the next thing I want to talk to you about is how you actually look after your stamps and how you clean your stamps and what you do when you've been stamping. Okay. So, so I've used this and I've still got ink on it. Okay. And I think I cleaned, did I clean that one off? No, I've still got ink on it. Now, what actually happens is if we don't clean our stamps in between stamping in one color and stamping on in another, can anyone tell me what's going to happen? What happens if I didn't clean that stamp? I've used it with copper clay and then I decide to go and use my Moody Mauve. What happens if I actually just ink that up with my Moody Mauve without cleaning it? Someone type into the comments and let me know. So I'm now going to talk to you about cross-pollinates. Janice, well done. It cross-pollinates, so it actually contaminates your ink pad. So it will put some of the copper clay into your Moody Mauve. And then what happens is your Moody Mauve won't look Moody Mauve. It'll look this funny, funky color because it's got some copper clay mixed with it. So you must always remember to actually not contaminate your ink pads. So you've got to make sure that you actually clean your stamps each and every time that you actually use your stamps, and you're going to change colors. So I'm going to ink that up. I'm going to stamp it down, and then I'm going to go, you know what? I need to clean my stamps. Now, this is my most favorite tool that I use in my stamp room. It is called our Stamp and Scrub. So it folds up. It's awesome. It folds up really neatly. It takes up very minimal space. It opens up and it's got these two brush platforms. Now, these brush platforms, they actually do come out. So you can actually pop your finger under there. I don't want to break a fingernail just at the moment, but I normally grab my Take Your Pick tool, and you can take your pick tool in there and you can actually pull them out. Okay, so that is removable. Can you see that? Removable. So you can take them out, you can take them away, and you can actually wash them in your sink and then let them dry and then pop them back in. A lot of people don't know that these are removable, but you can actually remove them out and clean them up. Now, the other thing that I want to show you, and I'm going to do it while I've got that out, in the corner, I don't know whether I can get it that I can show you here, but in the corner, we have a little sunshine. There it is. We have a little sunshine there. And in this corner, there they are, we have some little raindrops. Okay. Now, the raindrops and the sunshine is for you to keep one side dry and one side wet. Now, and you just got to bend that to go back in. Okay, so one side dry and one side wet. I'm making that look more difficult than it has to be. But anyway, and it just goes back in. You just bend it and it goes back in. I'm trying to not get ink all over my fingers. So we have a wet side. We have a dry side. We also have what we call Stamp and Mist. Now, some people say, do I have to use Stamp and Mist? Now, my answer to that question is if you use Stampin' Mist, it will moisturize and take care of your stamps. Okay. So, yes, okay, you can use water, but are you going to add moisture to your stamps and condition your stamps if you're just using water? The answer is no. So, what actually can happen? I mean, most stamps, if we're not looking after them, they can tend to go brittle and they can tend to fall apart. So, has anyone ever had red rubber stamps? I mean, I haven't found it with Stampin' Up ones, but I've found it with other red rubber stamps that I used to use, some no brand ones that I used to use, that they actually go a little bit chalky and they actually go powdery and they start to disintegrate. Now, the reason why that happens is because they haven't been conditioned and they haven't been looked after. So the Stampin' Mist actually has like a conditioner in it that will actually look after your stamps. So my suggestion is you can buy this big bottle, and honestly, I think it's like maybe $20 to buy the big bottle, but it lasts forever. I put it in a little tiny bottle that I have here, and I just keep filling it up. Now, I think in the whole time that I have been stamping with Stampin' Up, which has been nearly 7 years, I think I've gone through maybe 3 bottles of the Stampin' Mist. So you don't need to use a lot. And the reason why you don't need to use a lot is because when you actually spray your Stampin' Scrub, so you spray the wet side, and honestly, 4 or 5 sprays on the wet side, you then actually use the wet side to clean it. Okay, so you rub it around like that to make sure that the little fibers get into all the nooks and crannies. And you can see there it looks a bit messy. Then you rub it on the dry side and it cleans it lovely, and you get a nice cleaned stamp. Okay, now the same thing with your photopolymer. It will still condition your photopolymer stamps. It will clean them really nicely as well. Same process. Now, when you actually, and you've got 2 clean stamps by using that, they by using your Stampin' Scrub. Okay, so then you fold it up when you're not using it. Now that will actually stay wet. That side that you've got there will stay wet, and it will stay wet for most of your crafting session. If you're crafting for, say, an hour or 2 hours, you probably won't need to spray that again. It will stay wet enough that it will actually be able to be used several times over and over again. So that's why you don't need a lot of that Stampin' Mist, because if you close it up in between each and every time, you'll find that you won't have the issue of it drying out too often. So making sure that you're cleaning your stamps really, really well. It gives you the option of looking after your stamps, but also not cross-contaminating your ink pads. Now, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the difference between first generation stamping and second generation and third generation. So when people message me and they join Stampin' Up and they're brand new to Stampin' Up and they say to me, what is the best thing if I'm just starting out? What's the best thing to do when it comes to purchasing my inks? How is the best way to do it? Now, you can always, with a dark ink, you can always get a lighter version of it. With a light ink, you very rarely can get different stage stamping with a light ink. Now, I'm just going to show you the difference between something that's really, really dark. Now, I'm going to go, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm thinking that Berry Burst is probably going to be in our brights. I don't have mine arranged in brights and neutrals, but we have ink pads that you can buy in a bundle, and I have actually listed the brights in the supplies list. And the reason why I listed the brights, I'm going to double check now to make sure. Someone's probably going to tell me, no, it's not in the brights. But I'm going to show you where in our catalog you can actually find the ink pad bundles that you can get. Okay, so here in the catalog, and this is on page 125, you can see color collections. Okay, so you can see cardstock, you can see 12 by 12 cardstock, you can see classic Stampin' Pad bundles. So 141.75, and you will get 10 ink pads in that collection. So in the brights, I'm going to go over here so we can see what's in the brights. So in the brights we have, which it's down here on the bottom, we have Poppy Parade, Melon Mambo, Flirty Flamingo, Pumpkin Pie, Daffodil Delight, Lemon Lime Twist, Granny Apple Green, Coastal Cabana, oh look, Berry Burst, Azure Afternoon, and Berry Burst. Okay, so my suggestion is, if you are just starting out and you were thinking, I want to buy some ink pads, the best way to do it is to buy them in the collection. And also the best thing to do, and I mean, I can honestly tell you, if I've got any team members that are on here, when they were actually joining and they said to me, what is the best ink pad collection to get, what would you suggest? I would have suggested the Brights bundle. And the reason that I would have suggested the Brights bundle would have been for the fact that you can get so many different colors from the Brights bundle by first stage stamping, second generation stamping, third generation, and so on. So I'm just going to show you the difference now. So we're going to do this balloon and we're going to ink it up, and I'm going to stamp one balloon. Now that's what we call first generation. Okay, so it's stamped really well. I've used my Pierce mat. It's a photopolymer stamp, but I'm actually going to stamp it a second time. And we've got a different color again. Okay, I'm also going to stamp it a third time. And we've got a different color again. And I'm going to try a fourth time. And we've got a different color again. Okay, so can you see here that if you actually bought just the Brights, you'll have 4 different pinks there out of that one color? Okay, so if you wanted to get a lighter version, what you would actually do is, if you said, okay, I want to get that one, we ink it up, we use a scrap bit of paper and stamp off, and then we stamp on. Okay, and I've got that color there. If I wanted to get that color, I'm going to ink it up, I'm going to stamp it off not once but twice, and then I'm going to stamp it on, and I've got that color there. Okay, if I wanted to get the lighter color again, I'm going to ink it up, I'm going to stamp it off not once, not twice, 3 times, and bam, I've got the light color. Okay, so when you buy ink pads, you can actually, if you buy a darker color, you can get several colors out of a darker color. So I'm going to try another one here to show you as well. So another darker color we've got is Night of Navy. So I'm going to stamp some Night of Navy pots here. So I'm going to stamp one full strength, the next one second strength. So I've got a lighter one again. And then if I turn that over, the third one, I've got a lighter one again. And the fourth one, I've got another lighter one. And I can keep going. I can keep going and getting lighter versions. Okay, so every time that you stamp, you get a lighter version. So my philosophy is, when you go to buy ink pads, buy the darker colors, buy the brighter colors, because you can always get more stamped images out of that one ink pad rather than buying a lighter ink pad. So now I'm going to try one of our lighter colors. Okay. And I'm going to try and stamp that off a bit to make sure it's definitely clean. Let's try, let's say Bubble Bath. Is that in our subtles? Let me see. I'm assuming it would be in the subtles. Okay. Subtles. Yep. Bubble Bath is in our subtles. Okay. So I'm going to get, I'm going to clean that one there. So with the Bubble Bath, I'm then going to, maybe I should use a smaller stamp than that one. I might actually do that. I might grab the smaller balloon instead of the larger one, so we're not using up too much of that white cardstock. So I'm going to try Bubble Bath now, and I'm going to show you the difference between using a subtle color and how many times you can get a stamped image compared to a bright color. Okay, so let's grab the Bubble Bath. Okay, so I'm going to stamp in Bubble Bath, and I'm going to not re-ink. So I'm going to stamp. So I've got One color there. I've got another color there. I can't even get a third one. Okay. I very rarely can get a second one. I can then clean that. I can then go to Berry Burst and I can get 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I can even get nearly 5 out of the Berry Burst. So can you see here? Subtle, you can't even see the third one. Brights, you can definitely get quite a lot out of your inks. So making sure that you make the right selection when it comes to inks, then you will get more and more out of your inks for the simple fact of being able to get that ink to stretch even further. So this is what we call first generation, second generation, third generation, fourth generation, and we could have even got possibly a fifth generation out of our Brights inks. So even with a darker color again, if I did say our Starry Sky, let's clean that balloon off. And I'm going to grab another piece of white cardstock so that we can show you the difference. Actually, I'll just grab a piece of, I don't think it really matters that we're just using just copy paper. So if I do Starry Sky, for instance, we can get, let's see how many we can get here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, possibly 6. Okay, 6 out of that. Now let's bring in let me see. Let's bring in our Balmy Blue. So we'll bring in Balmy Blue. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it would be in the subtles. So we'll bring in Balmy Blue and we will ink that up and we will go 1, 2. Lucky if we can get 3. Okay. So you could buy this ink pad and get at least 5 different colors out of it. If you buy the subtles, you're going to get 2 colors out of it. Okay. So that's how you can actually make your ink pads stretch even further by choosing the right ink pads when you buy the ink pads. Now, another thing that I wanted to tell you about it as well, when it comes to our ink pads, people worry about getting ink on things. Now, the photopolymer stamps will actually go that pinky color whenever they will stain. And there's nothing wrong with, sorry, I'll pop that down onto the desk so you can see. So they get that pinky tinge to them. And that's totally okay. I mean, I can clean that off and it will stay that pinkish color. And it's something that actually happens with our stamp. So you can see there, it's still got that pinky tinge to it. It's totally okay for that to happen. Our stamps stain as soon as we put ink on them. But as far as our inks, they're all water-based. So all of our inks are water-based. If you get ink on your clothing, ink on your hands, they're water-based and they will stain for a little while, but they will come out. So they're not a permanent ink. So one of the things that people worry about all the time is getting ink all over them and the fact that, oh my God, I've got ink on me. It's totally okay. I mean, I wipe ink on, I wear black pants mostly. I wipe ink on my black pants because I know that it will come out. So, so you don't have to worry about that as far as the ink transferring onto things. The other thing is when it comes to inks, we can delve a little bit more into that in the coming classes that I've got. But depending on what type of coloring you're going to use is whether you need to use a water-based ink or an alcohol-based ink. And the alcohol-based inks are more for a permanent thing. So if you want something to not wash out of a bit of material or you want something to not rub off a shiny surface, then you use the permanent inks. So we also have different things like our Stamp and Write markers and our blends, and I will go more into that in more classes to come. So hopefully you have enjoyed this session this morning, teaching you all about how to get that perfect crisp stamped image. Now, if there's any products that I've showed you today and you're interested in purchasing, I would really appreciate any online orders if you are looking for anything in particular. If you have any questions about anything that I've showed you today, please don't hesitate. If you're watching the replay, type it into the comments and I'd be more than happy to help you. Janet said, I was thinking of Blushing Bride having a blonde moment. Yes, it was bubble bath that I was using. Balmy Blue was retired. Well, there you go. Yeah, well, I mean, I could have used boho blue. Yeah, so anyway, as far as like inking and coloring and stamping, if you use those never fail tricks of making sure you've got your pierce mat. If you don't own a pierce mat, then I suggest popping it on your shopping list. If you order through me this week, if you order any more than $65, you will get the card kit from my class. If you order before midnight on Friday night, you'll get the card kit to make 6 cards, so 2 of each card that I did in my class yesterday. If you didn't see that, jump on over to my YouTube channel and check it out because it was a super fun, awesome class using the earthen textures. I have bingo coming up on, I think it's the 3rd of July. I think it is the Wednesday in July. It's an in-person event as well as an online event. So if you actually want to attend online, we will be all playing bingo together, but I will be doing it via a Zoom call. So you can actually attend online as well. So that's $45 to attend. We will play 4 mini games of bingo and we will also play 2 major games. The 2 major games, you'll win shopping vouchers. The 4 mini games, you'll earn a free prize. There's 1 winner for each. It's only available to people in Australia. I'm sorry, I can't have people from overseas because I'm not allowed to send product overseas. I also have an online coffee and card class coming out for July, which is using the beautiful circle sayings stamp set. So if you're interested in that, jump on over to my website, which is stampingwithdonnag.com. Also, we have free shipping tomorrow. We have the designer series paper sale on, and we also have the joining special of $283 worth of product, and you only pay $169. So if you're brand new to crafting and you're thinking that you want to start getting to crafting, you're enjoying these beginner classes, then by all means, the best way to buy your products from Stampin' Up is to purchase the starter kit and to get that awesome deal. It's the best deal in the book. This month only, we actually have the extra added amount on. So you get to choose $283 worth of product of your choice, and you only pay $169. And that's running for the whole month of June. You've got 10 more days to get in on that special. And it's a really, really great special, and it's a great way of purchasing your products. Not to mention, you're going to get a 20% discount on all of your orders after while ever you stay current with Stampin' Up, and you get to be a part of my crafty team. So and I help and inspire you as much as I can with your crafting. So thank you, everyone. Give me the thumbs up if you love what I've done today. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications, and I will see you all again next week. And next week, what was I going to delve into? We might delve into the different types of coloring mediums that we can use. Okay, until next week, I will see you all again soon.